Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing today? My name is Justin Lefby. I'm the professor of real estate, and today we are talking technology, and we are talking more specifically webinars. Um, so the reason that I'm going this route today is I've had a couple people recently talk about seminars, and I am a huge fan of seminars. So a lot of the things that we will talk about today will really kind of, well, not really kind of, it really will work for seminars as well as webinars. Now, the reason that I am talking today about webinars specifically is, well, I'm a big video guy, right? And I think video is where it's at. I think video is where it stay. And plus, when you do webinars, this is evergreen material. Webinars are those tools that will help you be able to repurpose, recreate, reuse this media. Now, you can definitely do seminars and record them and get the same out of it. And I would absolutely encourage this. But I like this, right? I like this format. I think it's easier to get things done with. We get to be where everybody's at. Ever since the pandemic, in all honesty, hybrid is kind of where things are at, and a more virtual world is where things are at. So having those solutions in place to be where your audience is, I think, is always beneficial. Welcome everybody who is coming in. I appreciate you all being here. If you guys do have questions throughout the session, or even if you're watching this recorded, please always make sure that you write them in the comments, and I will respond. If it's live now, I'll respond live now. If it's later, I will do that. But I appreciate everybody being here. Okay, so what do we talk about today? We want to talk about how to build engaging webinars. We want to make sure we teach you how to build a successful environment for that. So we're going to talk about this in essentially one, two, three, four components. And you probably got a bonus component afterwards on this situation. So we got four-ish components in here that we're going to kind of talk about in large or in simple details. So the first and foremost is we're going to talk about knowing who your audience is, helping identify who that audience is, and help you guys really try to make sure you know what's going on, because that's what it's going to take. So, understanding your audience, we're going to talk about some of the tech that you need for running successful webinars, because tech is necessary for those webinars. We're also going to help you establish engagement in your webinars, because if we are going to do webinars, even seminars in this situation, they are going to need some sort of interaction. Sitting there and not being an active participant is not going to keep your audience engaged. It's also not going to help keep them motivated. So we definitely got to build some strategies in there as well. And then the last thing we'll talk about is that capture, right? We got to find some way to build that call to action. We got to do some ways to come out there and make sure that we all know how to gather leads, right? Generate the business, do what we're trying to do this for. So that's basically the four-ish components. The ish is going to be, we will talk a little bit about marketing at the very end. I do think that's a little different. This is assuming we've already got there, we've already marketed them, but I still think it matters to have that in place. So first and foremost, step one, the first thing we need to do and need to know is know your audience. Now, the common vernacular back in the day was know your avatar, right? Identify who your ideal client is. That has changed, I think, a little bit in recent times, recent trends, because that doesn't really establish what we're trying to identify now, right? Because in our world, we are our custom avatar, quote unquote, uh, is can be extremely generic these days. So more or less, what I think we need to be able to do is identify and know your customer's journey, right? Russell Brunson, he teaches a lot of good lead generation classes. He talks about knowing that customer journey in great detail. I would always recommend watching him and following him, because I think he does a great job with this. But we need to know, you know, how did we get them? What were the pain? What were the pain points, what were the benefits, what was the rewards that they got here for that. What are they looking for? What are they looking to solve? What are they looking to do better in? What what are their goals? What are their ambitions? What are their fears? What are their dreams, right? We need to know those when we're thinking about our customer. We need to be able to identify those because those are going to help us throughout the conversation in our webinars to engage with our clients, engage with our customers, right? So the reason we need to know that customer journey is one, when we're building our titles or we're building this specific webinar, we're hitting the right points. We're talking about the right things. We're trying to think of the end in mind when we are building the webinar. And that end is in mind because we're trying to satisfy something, solving a pain point or helping them chase their dream. But it also is going to help us when we are talking to them like we're talking now to you guys. It's going to help us understand and interact and communicate with them at their truest moment, at their truest point in time. It also matters because if you're going to build content for your webinar, you need to know what you're going to talk about, right? Instead of we're just trying to attract these people, what are we trying to attract? How are we trying to attract it? What are we trying to give them, right? So knowing that avatar, quote unquote avatar customer journey is going to be the very first step that we need to do for that. And we're going to see that when we start talking about the interaction part. That's going to help us. The next part we need to think about is once we know our avatar, and I could have put tech essentials first, but I think always knowing the person we're talking about is important at the very, very beginning. But I do think the next thing that we want to make sure we are talking about in here is knowing our tech that we need to have, because that's going to matter. Um, the tech solutions that we have in place are going to be a big platform for our webinars / seminars. Even seminars are going to matter for this, but specifically on platforms, we're going to need to know what our webinar platform is. Is it Zoom? Is it what I do? I use StreamYard. Is it Restream? So I got a couple of friends that do that. Is this something else? E-webinars, I think is one of them's called. There's a lot out there. Um, uh, WebJam, I think is another one. There are a bunch that are there that you can look at and use. I would say probably the most prevalent, depending on what you think your webinar is going to look like and what it's going to do, is going to be probably Zoom first, because more and more people know that on a daily basis. But when you're looking for other platforms, multi-hosting platforms, things like that, Zoom and Restream are really good tools for that. So those are the things I would be looking at as far as that goes, because those I think are very solid tools. And then next, when you get past the platform, you then need to think about what is that AV solution that we're looking for, those audio video tools that we have in place. So how are you talking? How are you being heard? My people in the podcasting world, you don't see me pointing at it, but I'm pointing at my microphone right now. Right? And I've gone through lots of them. Is it wireless mics? Is it what are known as USB mics? Like I have this Deity right now that is really, really nice mic. I think it works very well. It's a USB based mic. It has a lot of different filtering systems straight in. So I don't have to do a lot with it to make things simple. You have Yetis, which are great USB mics. I have one somewhere around here that work really well to make that clear sound. Now, the mic I have here is a very focused mic, a pinpoint mic. So I've got to be on top of it so you guys hear me. If I start walking away, you guys don't hear me as well. But the Yeti mics, if I walk away, you're going to hear everything, but you're literally going to hear everything. You are literally going to hear every background noise, every hum, every whir, every keyboard tap, everything that I could do. You're going to hear. It's going to pick it all up. It's great for conversations. It's great for interviews. Not so great if you're not in a quiet environment, right? So those are some of the things that you want to be aware of and very cognizant of as far as that goes. You also have what is it called? You also have other mics, very professional mics that are out there. Audio Technicas have some really good, powerful mics when you do more and you do bigger situations like that, you do have more powerful mics. They are little plug-in mics. They got the big thick cables like your musicians typically have, but they also will then need some sort of mixer to go in there, which means there's another component of complexity that you need to add in there to make sure that people can hear you. The nice thing of having mixers, they can hook into your computer. You could have multiple mics, multiple pinpoint mics, and then now your clients or your host, your co-host rather, can come in there and we could have an interview in place and we don't have to worry about having a Yeti mic and hearing all the noise. We can be very focused and very linear in that conversation. So those work too, adds a complexity to it. It's kind of the stages you want to step into to make that happen, but it's there as well. So you always want to think about that in there. Again, going back to the platform, if you are doing interviews or things like that and having co-hosts, having Zoom or StreamYard or Restream or something like that will definitely help you do the interviews because we all can be in our own location with our own mic set up and go from there and make life work a little bit easier. So that always works as well. Couple things you want to think of when you're getting ready for your Zoom, when you're thinking about tech, though, is getting that pre-game setup, right? I want to make sure I come in. Like if I have interview people in here, I usually tell them I need them in here 10 to 15 minutes ahead of time so I can make sure I can hear them, so I can make sure the video is okay. I will gladly always, as a tech tip, always going to gladly suffer the video quality over the audio, right? I need to hear you more than I need to see you. Now, we all need to be seen these days, but I'm willing to sacrifice the video a little bit these days just to make sure I have better audio. But you want to make sure you have that in there. You want to make sure you can have your presentation up if you're using presentation materials to have that out there and they can be seen. You want to, if you're sharing links and things like that, you're going to want to make sure and test those links out. I literally just got done teaching a class. I taught it. I checked on everything like 2 days ahead of time and all the links worked. Went to class, shared it, didn't work. So you want to check that day one last time just to make sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to. Make sure everything is working the way you want it to work. So check that stuff in there. Check that your co-hosts or any people that are participating is out there. Also, if you're streaming to this and you're streaming to multiple platforms, if that's something you choose to do, you do want to make sure that you are also checking those platforms and making sure it's receiving the videos. If you're going live and you don't, and it's not working, you may just have to call an audible and not have it go there. But it's something you want to be aware of to make sure that you have that in place. So just something to think about as far as that goes. So those are just a couple tech tips, nothing extremely challenging or complicated with those, but those are some of the things that make that webinar go successfully, makes it go without a hitch, makes it happen in place. Now, the next, if we're going to do webinars, we know who our customer is. We know that journey. We have set up and tested our platform, so we're good with that. Now we're going live, right? We're going live. We're here in person. We're getting ready to talk to everybody. We're saying, hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? We're going to get ready with selling your home 101, whatever, right? What's next, right? Am I going to talk for 30 minutes? Am I going to talk for 40 minutes? Am I going to talk for 50 minutes? What am I going to do? How am I going to interact? What questions am I going to ask in here? So we need to fill out ways to build interaction. Again, hello, everybody that's coming in. Appreciate you all being here. If you ever have questions or you just want to say hi through the chat box. See, you're there. I see a bunch of you guys checking in, checking out. Happy to have you here. But we want to think of ways to interact with our consumers, right? Listening to what I always say when I teach classes, Zoom fatigue is a real thing. So you can't just sit there and talk for 30, 40 minutes. It's going to wear them out. You're going to have to find ways to keep them engaged. You're going to have to find ways to keep them motivated to stay moving forward and keep them intrigued and energized to going on. Because at the very end, what we always want to do when we're doing webinars is have them do something afterwards. Reach out to us for more questions, accomplish a task, do something. But if we don't keep them engaged throughout the whole thing, they're going to check out. They're going to check out and they're going to be done. So we do want to make sure we have things in place. So a couple quick examples of ways to keep folks engaged is to have some sort of workbook, most specifically something that they can write into, either take notes or have spaces where they fill in words of common phrases, common vernacular that you use. You'll blank those out. And when they people write in there, you're going to see that they can fill that out. Oh, Justin said, okay, the 5 things you must do for goal writing is know your have a white heat burning desire. You need to have an exact mount, right? And some of those words would absolutely be in there and would be blank, and they'd have to write them in. And you'd want to have that in there. You also may want to have some charts and diagrams so they can do their own editing and make their own vision boards and stuff like that. But making it an editable workbook is something that always comes into play with this. That's something that makes life just a little bit easier for us and keeps our clients involved in the conversation. So that's one of the ways that you want to do this. Another way that you want to do this is you want to make sure you open opportunities for Q&A. One of the ways I love to do this at the very beginning of class is say, hey, we're going to talk about goal planning today. We're going to write the 5 biggest goals you have in here. But as I'm getting ready through the introduction, don't hesitate to tell me some of your biggest challenges. Tell me some of your biggest hurdles, and and don't be afraid while you're in there to ask me a couple questions. I may not get to them right at that moment, but I guarantee you, if you get them in the queue and you put them in there now, I will get to them throughout the session, because hopefully I'll teach about them. But if not, I can definitely focus a conversation along those lines. And if they do write questions or they do make comments, right, I can come in here, especially if I'm using a little more complicated software. I could come in here and bring that comment up, right? I can come in here and I don't think I have anything. I can come in here and just post them. And when I post those comments, now they get to see who said it. And then I get to answer that question. So we're building that interaction. We're building that scenario for people to come in and interact with that. It's always good to give them those kudos and those credentials for asking those questions. Even if they make a great comment, intrigue them, pull that stuff up there. We all like to see our name in lights. It always works for that stuff. So don't hesitate to pull them in. And then if you're going to change topics and change conversations, don't hesitate to say, hey, before we start talking about call to actions, which is what I'm going to talk about next. I'm not there yet, but I can come out there and say, do you guys have any questions on what I just talked about? Ask them here now. If we get to them, I'll happy to answer those questions as they come along. Right? We can do that in place. So the power of Q&A is there. Also, have pre-planned questions. If you know your customer, you know that customer journey, you know the pain points, you know the struggle points, so you already know some of those questions, and you can just ask them. Hey, Justin, I don't know how to get anybody to show up to my webinar. You know what? At the very end, I got a tip for you on that. I'm going to show you ways to get that done, right? I can ask that question. I can just lead into it and do that. Because remember, some people don't want to be the first, but once the momentum happens, it will come in and change. So another thing that you want to make sure you do when you're working in here is change the focus. So one of the things that you want to do in here every so often is change the focus of your screen. Now, what happens when you're talking about adult education and when you're in here working on that stuff, you don't want to have the PowerPoint running at all times. You don't want to have the face running at all times. You don't want to have that in place because um, we zone out. There's basically studies that have been done that said essentially about every 15 minutes or so, we're going to have to do something to redirect the brain, refocus it, regrab that attention. So having stuff out there, if I was in a room, I'd be walking throughout the room, changing the focus. Here, I don't get that. You guys are looking at me through the screen. You're looking here and making that happen. So what I have to do inside of here is change the conversation, change the focus. So I can change the conversations, but I also can come up here and I can just put a new screen in here and people will come up. Now, what I would recommend is don't have it match like the same color scheme, right? I want this to look dramatically different, something that pops up and is garnering my attention. Because if they've lost track, they got on their phone, something bright pops up, it's going to garner their attention a lot stronger. The other thing I'm always going to recommend is have chapters and teasers, right? So in YouTube, YouTube wants you to have the chapters. They want you at the 5 minute mark. This was talked about. It's a 7 minute mark. This was talked about at 9 minute mark. That still works for us because sometimes we just want to get to the point. Now we'll be willing to wait here because this is live, right? Webinars are traditionally live. They don't have to be, by the way. They're traditionally live. But one of the things that we can do in here is put the chapters in here and put some teaser points in here. Here's what we're going to get out of this class. Here's what you're going to be able to do. Here's how this is going to happen. And we can get out there and have those webinars in place and the chapters in there. We don't necessarily have the times along those chapters, but we can have those in the point in the session. And then later, if you put this to YouTube or other places, you can then time chapter them out. And then people can just jump to that stuff at that point in time. Works really well. So having those chapters out there, having what's going on. Some people are check folks, right? I'm a big DISC person, a DISC. So my C folks like to be able to check things off. So, okay, we hit topic 1, we hit topic 2, we hit topic 3. Okay, we're moving forward. So you always want to have those in place as well. And the last thing you want to have is at the very end is a call to action. You're going to want to very much make sure that when you're looking at this, that call to action is there, right? What do you want them to do? Do you want them to join a program of yours? Are you trying to sell a product? Are you trying to get them to come to an event? What are you trying to do? Have that stuff ready. Have the links, the QR codes, the action items in place. For me, telling all you here, I would always be trying to find some way to get them to sign up for something, newsletter, a tip sheet, a product sheet, something. Get them to sign up for it. Get them to take action. It's a lead generation solution for many of us in the room today. So please always make sure you're trying to find ways that are going to help you capture that information. And again, you should tease that stuff ahead of time, whatever that end goal is. You don't necessarily just sell right off the bat. You don't want to be selling right off the bat, but you do want to make sure you are giving a tease saying, hey, by the way, here's some things coming at the end. So please stay, right? Stuff like that. All right. So we just got done talking about know your customer journey, know some of the tech solutions. We talked about how to keep people interactive and in charge. The last two things I want to do for you is really this. One, I'm going to give you a couple quick bonuses because I think it matters in webinars. One, and they tie together. Don't be afraid to have co-hosts in the arena. When I teach people to do this in live/seminar versions of this stuff, I want 3-4 people in the room because it takes away from the time from you. It takes responsibility of how entertaining and interactive you have to be the whole time and engaging. It lets other people focus on other conversations and you bring experts in your area. So don't be afraid to co-host on topics that you are going to do and make sure that those people bring value in the areas of the topics out here, right? And then 2, you need to be able to market this stuff, right? It's usually fairly easy to market early on. You got your sphere, your family, friends, your close neighbors, whatever. You got those group of people you can really market to initially. But then you got to find other ways to market this, right? Do you put it on meetup.com? Do you put it at Starbucks? Where do you put this stuff? Again, knowing that customer journey, knowing where they sit, what they do, where their pastimes are at is definitely going to help you with this. But you need to know that. You need to know where they're at. You need to know what they're doing, how they're working, where you need to be to see them. Could be Google ads. It could be Facebook ads. But it also, when you do co-hosts, you can rely on them, right? There's an old conversation out there that essentially says we each know at least 200 people. Well, that's fine. If I'm doing this here by myself and I do a live webinar when I'm trying to sell products myself, I know 200 people or more. But if I bring 2 or 3 more hosts in, now I've got 600, 800, maybe 1,000 people I can market to on a consistent basis. It gives my lifespan of these webinars a much longer time, which is the last tip. You want to be able to figure out what your model is for this and how often you're doing it, and you want to be very consistent with it. So if you're going to be if you're going to do these webinars, you want to make sure you say once a month, once every other month. I'm not a big fan of doing it every 3 months. I think it's too long. But you can do that. And if you are going to do once every 2 months, I would also recommend having some sort of teaser out there of emails you can send them saying, "Hey, by the way," and keep them intrigued, keep them engaged. That way, when it's time to invite them and remind them to come check in, you can do that. So that was the last little bonus tip out there. Hope you guys all appreciated this. I brought this conversation up because I was literally having this conversation this week with someone, and I thought it was something valuable to share with everybody in here. So I hope you had a good time. Please, on my YouTube channel, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you're all from, subscribe. I do these lives specifically on YouTube every week, somewhere between 11 and 1 o'clock. I haven't necessarily mastered the time exactly yet. I'm getting better on that. Be consistent. I'm not as good as that one. But if you're on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell. That way you get notifications when I do go live so you can see what's happening. And then as always, email me, put it in the comments, your thoughts, your likes, also any questions that you may have in here, because that's helping me build my next series of topics. My goal this year is to have a video once a week and to help everybody here stay in business. So with that being said, go have a great 2024, folks.